tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
Very devastating.
It's kind of scary, you know, like my son is in the school.
Deadly stabbing. Police say a young man has been killed after an attack in a school parking lot in Surrey.
It should piss you off and frighten you that my clinical decisions are actually not made based on what's best for you.
Some BC doctors claim they're being held back from prescribing what's best for their patients, and it comes down to money.
People are realizing, wait a minute, what could be killing these whales?
Plus, 4 dead humpbacks found on the BC coast in just a few weeks. Why is this happening?
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening, I'm Dan Burritt. Thanks for joining us. Anita is away tonight. Startling news in Surrey this evening, where police say a young man has been stabbed to death in a school parking lot. The CBC's Benit Brach joins us now with more. Benit, what happened here?
Dan, the 18-year-old victim was stabbed around noon. It happened in the parking lot of Tamanawa Secondary School on 66th Avenue near 126th Street in Newton. Mounties say officers tried to save the victim, but he later died in hospital. Police say one person has been arrested. It's not clear if the victim or the person in jail are students at the school.
Police are still working to determine whether or not the suspect and the victim are known to each other and what their associations, if any, are to the school.
Mounties say the integrated homicide investigation team has been called in. The stabbing is very concerning for parents and guardians.
I just want my kid to be home safely every day, and school is supposed to be a safe place for them, but nowadays I don't think it is.
No words, just upsetting. And, you know, to know that this is something that reoccurs at the school often, it's just, you know, is my brother safe? Are other students safe? It's just really, you don't know what to think.
It's too bad here. It's a bad situation, yeah.
Police want to talk to any students who witnessed the stabbing or who have cell phone video of the attack. Anyone with information is asked to contact IHIT. Dan?
Benit Brach reporting live for us tonight. Thank you, Benit. And we have more breaking news to tell you about now. A major police incident has shut down part of Highway 1 and leading to closures at several Expo Line stations. Video online appears to show officers firing while running down Highway 1 in Coquitlam near United Boulevard. You can see traffic has stopped there. Drive BC tweeting that drivers should expect major delays due to congestion in both directions. Commuters are also being told to expect delays because of the closure on the Expo Line Braid Station. TransLink tells CBC News that trains traveling through the station in both directions will not be stopping. All other Expo stations are unaffected at the moment. We're working to get you more details, and we'll bring them to you as soon as we can. Medical specialists in BC are speaking out about what they call unreasonable challenges to get patients the best treatment available. The public program that covers the cost of some drugs has guidelines that require patients to try cheaper drugs first. Doctors argue that is just dangerous. And as Belle Peary reports, CBC News has learned changes to Pharmacare rules may not be out of the question.
Game-changing new drugs and devices regularly appear in doctors' offices. Getting them into patients' hands, not so much.
Clinical decisions are being handcuffed by financial Ministry of Health decisions.
New options are often expensive options. BC Pharmacare requires patients to try cheaper ones first.
For expensive drugs, it puts obstacles in the way to prevent widespread prescription. And the obstacle is called the special authority. So ultimately, it's to reduce prescriptions to save the province money.
Special authority is only granted when less costly drugs have been tried and failed.
I don't prescribe these drugs ever because they're dangerous.
Many British Columbians know that firsthand.
I was put on regular insulin, which made me gain almost like 60 pounds.
When January Zamora's doctor prescribed Ozempic for her diabetes, it took a year to get special authority for Pharmacare coverage. It wasn't easy.
No. Sorry. I laugh at that. No, it's not. She had to advocate for me and jump through hoops.
It's best care versus best cost. And in a socialized healthcare system, and in a system where universal healthcare has been probably one of the greatest things this country has, that's not happening.
Late last week, an offer by doctors to revise Special Authority or SA guidelines was acknowledged by the Ministry of Health. In a memo, Assistant Deputy Minister Mitch Mineo wrote, "When we are able to re-examine our SA criteria, hopefully in the near future, we will be in contact with you to further discuss your recommendations."
It should piss you off and frighten you that my clinical decisions are actually not made based on what's best for you and what's healthiest and safest for your long-term care, but actually what's cheapest for this government.
There's no timeline on when the rules might change.
And Bill Puri now joins us with more. Bill, is there any workaround for doctors and patients here?
Well, Dr. Elliott, who you just met in the item, he had a workaround. He would prescribe the cheaper drugs. The patient would get them, but would be told, don't take them under any circumstances. So what they were doing was creating the necessary paper trail they thought Pharmacare wanted to get the better drugs faster. Pharmacare reported Dr. Elliott to the College of Physicians and Surgeons. The college is still looking at that complaint. Of course, Dr. Elliott isn't doing it anymore. One more thing. We've heard Health Minister Adrian Dix talk openly about his own type 1 diabetes. Dr. Elliott is his doctor.
All very interesting. Bill Puri, thanks very much. To other news now, Vancouver City Council has passed a motion today making good on Mayor Ken Sim's election promise for more police officers and mental health nurses. But are there bigger police debates coming down the line? Our municipal affairs reporter Justin McElroy is back to break it all down for us. Justin?
Yeah, Dan, in the middle of today's council meeting, while council was debating and ultimately approving the first steps to hire those 100 new police officers and 100 mental health nurses, the Vancouver Police Department put forward their proposal for what their budget should be next year. And it is a big increase, a $38.5 million increase to be exact. Now, you can see in this chart, about $17.5 million of that is fixed costs. $15.7 million is what they estimate for 100 new police officers and 20 staff. And then about $6 million for extra asks, such as better technology, doing more around overtime and holidays, upgrading their police boat, things like that. So this has always been the biggest part of the city's budget of about $1.8 billion. That $38.5 million is a 11% increase from last year. And there's always big arguments over how big the police budget should be. So today it passed with the first step that they needed to go through, but there are going to be much bigger debates in the next few weeks over what the larger issue of the VPD budget is.
And what are the chances of all of this funding, all of these approvals actually going through?
Well, pretty high when you consider we just had an election a month ago, and Ken Sim, the new mayor, won big. That VPD request does have to go through the police board, which will happen in 2 days from now. Then it has to go to city council as part of their overall budget debate. We don't know what the proposed property tax increase for 2023 is going to be and how big the police increase of that is going to be. But a councillor who's now sort of part of the opposition, Pete Fry, brought up today in council that no matter what he and other people might think about some of these questions, it's sort of a fait accompli.
I really feel that this is poorly formed and really is more deserving of there's certainly some great stuff talking about the mental health and some of the support for the Safer Communities Action Plan, but the specific allocation of funding, I am really struggling with where the numbers are coming from, how this has been vetted. We've seen the numbers change a number of times. And frankly, I know that this is going to go ahead because of the ABC majority, but I think it's reckless.
Reckless to some, or just going along with their election promises to others, but a lot of big changes happening very quick at City Hall these days.
Municipal Affairs reporter Justin McElroy, thanks very much. A BC Ministry of Children and Family Development employee has been identified as the victim of a Prince Rupert murder-suicide. The RCMP were called to the Ocean Centre office mall Monday morning after reports of shots fired. They say a 44-year-old man entered the mall and shot a 52-year-old woman before turning the gun on himself. And Canada Border Services Agency confirms one of their employees was involved in the shooting. The suspect was taken to hospital and later died from self-inflicted injuries. Police say the pair did know each other. Crown prosecutors across BC have new marching orders from the Attorney General. They are to ask judges to keep suspected criminals deemed repeat violent offenders behind bars while awaiting trial. As Mira Baines reports, the changes to bail conditions and requests are meant to address public safety concerns.
The new bail policy is expected to help deal with threats to public safety. There's been a public outcry over random violent attacks and violent repeat offenders affecting crime in communities. BC Attorney General Murray Rankin issued a directive to the prosecution service.
We're directing all of the Crown Counsel, the 500 hardworking men and women across this province, to look at repeat violent offenders as a significant issue and treat it accordingly.
It's part of a larger public safety plan announced on Sunday by new Premier David Eby. The BC government has been under pressure to act on a repeat offender report. It said stranger attacks in Vancouver from 2020 to 2021 rose by 35% compared to 2019. The BC Prosecution Service released details about the new directive. Some key changes which are effective immediately would include Crown Counsel seeking the detention of repeat violent offenders charged with an offence against a person or when a weapon is involved. Crown Counsel will consider factors like outstanding criminal charges involving a weapon and to give consideration to breached conditions.
The tools that will be available through the directive, we hope, will enhance the ability of the Crown, working with the police, to get repeat violent offenders off our streets to make people safe.
The Attorney General says although he's convinced the directive will make a difference, ultimately it's up to a judge to decide if someone is granted bail. Mira Baines, CBC News, Victoria.
We have a daring rescue to tell you about now in Cranbrook after fire broke out on the 3rd floor of the former Knights Hall. Take a look. Fire Chief Scott Driver tells CBC News crews rescued one person from a window in that building. Another was taken to hospital with minor smoke inhalation. 24 people rent rooms in that building, which has now been deemed uninhabitable. A prominent First Nations scholar says a birth certificate recently obtained by CBC has convinced her Mary Ellen Turpelafond does not have a legitimate claim to Indigenous ancestry. Turpelafond is a former Saskatchewan judge and high-profile academic. She has claimed her father was a Cree child who was adopted by her non-Indigenous grandparents. But as Jeff Leo reports, a birth certificate recently obtained by CBC casts doubt on that story.
Cindy Blackstock says when she read CBC's story about the birth certificate, that was the final straw for her. The government-issued document says that Mary Ellen Turpelafond's father, William Turpel, was the natural-born child of British parents, not an adopted Cree boy, as Turpelafond has claimed. Blackstock is a McGill University professor and a nationally recognized advocate for children. She says over the past few weeks, she's been following CBC's reporting about Turpelafond and her claims to have Cree ancestry. And that reporting has led her to have serious concerns, but she says this latest revelation, this birth certificate, has removed all doubt.
Seeing that birth certificate to me was pretty clear and convincing evidence, suggesting that in this case, there is no Indigenous identity per se, that the only Indigenous identity claim comes from being a member of her husband's community, and that doesn't make you Indigenous.
She points out that some Indigenous leaders have defended Turpelafond by pointing out that she has been accepted by her husband's community, the Muskeg Lake Cree Nation in Saskatchewan. But Blackstock points out that Turpelafond has claimed to be from the Norway House Cree Nation in Manitoba. She says she's spent a lot of time in Norway House and has never heard Turpelafond's name.
I've often heard how proud they are of their nation members, including Jordan River Anderson, the founder of Jordan's Principle, amazing people like Tina Keeper. I've never heard any conversation regarding Mary Ellen when I've been up there. So that also carries a lot of weight, is people from the community are saying that this does not line up with their memory.
Mary Ellen Turpelafond has lived, quite literally, all of the lives that can be lived in the law.
Blackstock points out that Turpelafond is still employed by UBC, and she has been granted many honorary doctorates from universities across the country. She says if Turpelafond received any benefits based on her ancestry claims, then she received them illegitimately, and those universities need to take action. CBC has provided Trapelle Lafond a copy of the birth certificate and requested her comment, but she has not replied. Jeff Leo, CBC News, Regina.
Several dead humpback whales have washed ashore in BC over the last few weeks. That's raising concerns for researchers who say there could be even more out there. The Department of Fisheries and Oceans says 2 of the 4 found since October 12th have signs of blunt force trauma. And researchers say at least 3 entangled humpbacks have been found along the coastline as well.
What has to be realized is dead whales usually sink. So usually they disappear with the stories of how they died. So it can't be said, yes, this is unusual that more have ended up somewhere where people have seen them, but there could be more that have died in the past that have sunk to the bottom of the ocean or ended up somewhere on the coast where people haven't seen them.
The Marine Education Society says threats are rising because of increased boat traffic, which can harm marine life and boaters as well. The group wants more education for ship operators on how to avoid collisions and how to untangle marine mammals. Avian flu has been spreading across Canada and in the U.S. for almost a year now, and it looks like things could be getting worse. The Canadian Food Inspection Agency says 10 commercial poultry farms in the Fraser Valley have now had to quarantine for the flu in the last week, putting BC's poultry farmers on edge.
When you first wake up in the morning and you go to the barn and you hear the birds and you're listening for, are they happy today? Are they still doing well? And that sigh of relief, like, okay, we're good for another day. But there is this uneasiness every morning before you get there, whether or not it's going to be okay. It's a very stressful time for us as farmers.
The last time BC farmers had avian flu this intense was 2004, when 17 million birds were culled to prevent the flu's spread. Both farmers and the province say they're doing everything they can to make sure it doesn't reach that point again. It was hard enough for some people to breathe on those bad days, but an air quality report is raising the alarm over the growing severity of wildfire smoke in our province. Conditions are expected to get worse in the coming years, which could mean even worse health effects. As John Hernandez tells us, researchers say communities have to adapt.
From vehicle emissions to wood smoke, the predominant pollutants in BC's air are shifting.
Wildfires, open burning, residential wood heating are contributing a larger and larger fraction of air pollution to the overall mix.
Researchers say BC's air quality is relatively good, just not year-round, with longer and more severe wildfire seasons posing a particular concern.
Without a doubt, climate change is impacting our health.
This air quality report, released Tuesday, looks back on 2021 and supports an alarming trend researchers have noticed over the years. Wildfire smoke is traveling farther, reaching higher altitudes, and sticking around for longer.
It used to, be isolated in areas further north. That is no longer the case, and this is a significant impact for people living in Metro Vancouver.
Wildfire smoke exposure can lead to bronchitis, reduced lung function, and increased risk of cardiovascular illness, while events like last year's heat dome, which released high levels of ground ozone, are also damaging.
When you breathe that in, it's like giving your lung tissues a sunburn. That can create a significant long-term health issue, even for healthy individuals.
Experts say these climate trends are likely to increase over the foreseeable future.
We really, as a province, need to work towards learning to live with wildfire as best we can and learning to live with smoke.
Meaning residents need to take steps to protect their health.
The smoke's being generated outside. All of the things that we can do to help limit the infiltration of outdoor smoke into the indoor environment will help us.
And to support those who are most at risk, launching public clean air spaces could also become the norm.
We see cooling centers and warming centers, which are fantastic initiatives by municipalities. We also need to dedicate clean air spaces so those most vulnerable can protect themselves.
Adaptation, researchers say, can hopefully bridge the gap until a time when the smoke clears. John Hernandez, CBC News, Vancouver.
Meteorologist Johanna Wagstaffe joins us now with the forecast and more on the fallout from climate change and those wildfires. Joe, our water supply, we're still waiting for it to catch up.
Yes, that's right, Dan. It has been a wild year from heat dome to fires and now into that drought that you're right, we are still seeing the effects of. This is a look at the water storage for Metro Vancouver, the reservoir in Coquitlam Lake. And you can see the trend starting back in May all the way down to where we are right now in November. This range in blue, that's the normal range, the safe range as we go through that diurnal cycle of winter snow melting through the summer. You can see 2015, we know that was a dry year. And in red, that is the drought. See how low, how close it got to the lower end of that range from basically August through to October. And then check this out, this spike at the end, how dramatically it rises with all of our heavy rains that really just began 3 weeks ago. So it doesn't take much to replenish the reservoir, but it also doesn't take much to get it close to that lower limit. And we now are in our rainy season. We would expect to see this recovery. It is happening at an unusual rate to see those two extremes, but we do need to replenish that water supply. Speaking of replenishing water supply, though, Dan, got a couple more systems to go. But first, a break. I'll tell you more in a little bit.
Sounds good. Thank you, Joe.
You're welcome.
It is a new frontier that allows you to own something that only exists online. After the break, we'll give you a crash course on NFTs, non-fungible tokens, how they work and why they matter for artists and others. Stick around. Hello to everyone watching our commercial-free live stream. BC Lions quarterback Nathan Rourke had a breakout season, to say the least, this year. Despite being sidelined for half of the team's games due to injury, Rourke won the CFL award for Most Outstanding Canadian. And as Josh Grant reports, his skills on the gridiron have also drawn attention from south of the border.
The BC Lions bowed out of the CFL playoffs in the semi-finals, losing to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers 28-20 last Sunday. But the story of the season was 24-year-old quarterback Nathan Rourke. He threw for over 3,000 yards and 25 touchdowns in just 10 games. After starting the season 8-1, Rourke sprained his foot and had to have surgery, but his performance was still impressive enough to have over 20 NFL teams come knocking.
I never had a true opportunity at the NFL level. Not as a quarterback, and that's been something that I've wanted to at least try for a very long time, and it's fortunate enough to have an opportunity and try to see where that goes, and understanding that I have a heck of an opportunity still here with the Lions.
Born in Victoria, Rourke grew up in Ontario before heading to the U.S. He played 3 years with the Ohio University Bobcats as a quarterback and wide receiver. The New York Giants invited him to a tryout after college, but he didn't make the cut. In 2020, Rourke was drafted by the BC Lions in the second round. 2 years later, he was a starter. A CFL writer says Rourke worked with a Vancouver-based kinesiologist during the pandemic, and it paid off in a big way.
He just completely redefined his mechanics, how he throws the ball. And now you're talking about a guy who is the most accurate quarterback in a single season in CFL history, and who throws the ball with incredible velocity.
Rourke is under contract with the Lions until the end of 2023, but the CFL allows players to opt out of their deals if they're given a shot at the NFL.
Nathan Rourke, from what I've seen, has all the tools. Talent-wise, he is better than many NFL backup quarterbacks. He'll be poised quite well if that sort of mid-level starter goes down to take over and show something. He is truly a guy who, if he gets that opportunity, I'm not sure he gives it up.
Rourke has scheduled workouts with several NFL teams and hopes to earn a spot with one of them next season. Josh Grant, CBC News, Vancouver.
Maybe you've heard or seen them. They're called non-fungible tokens, NFTs. They're unique assets that only exist in the digital world. So how do they work? How would you buy one? And would you want to? Here's everything you need to know about NFTs.
If I were an outsider and see all of this, I would think people are crazy.
I really think that NFT is a whole new type of tool.
A new medium where you can express yourself and like coders can express themselves.
It's like a new paintbrush. And there are people who will see it in a native way of like, hey, NFTs have these interesting properties, and I could paint a whole new picture that was impossible before.
An NFT stands for a non-fungible token. NFTs represent digital ownership, right? This is a brand new concept that most people have never ever experienced before.
A non-fungible token is just proof of ownership and authenticity. At its core, it's ownership on the internet. But sometimes people don't really understand that, like, why do I need to own something on the internet when I can just have the image or the picture? So like, I try to explain it as like, a digital asset that's like permanently written on the blockchain. But that in and of itself could have some lingo that people don't really understand.
What is a blockchain? It's just a new kind of computer. It's this previously impossible idea of a computer that no one actually controls. And yes, there are individual computers that are running that network. But if those people shut down their computers, the network will run on other people's computers because of the replication.
If you create your art and you NFT it, we know who owns it. You own it. And we can see all the transactions that are happening as well too. People can steal your images, your posts, anything that you put on the internet, right? But in Web3, it leaves a nice little like trail of like transactions on the blockchain, and it's permanent and it's immutable. Like people cannot modify it.
So the way you can think of it is that if I have a dollar bill and you have a dollar bill, those dollar bills are fungible, right? It doesn't matter which dollar bill I have. But now if I take one of the dollar bills and I sign my name on the dollar bill, that dollar bill now is marked, right? This dollar bill is now unique. So that's what non-fungible means. What you're able to do with non-fungible tokens online is you're able to digitize assets and prove ownership of any sort of digital piece or digital information.
It's a digital way to verify that information. It's easy just for us to make sure that like scarcity and all the value of a very specific item is present and is like public for everybody to see.
This whole space is about flipping the pyramid from large corporations, tech companies who control your data and control all that type of information, to the little guys who are the creators and typically are the bottom of the pyramid, and it's struggling for them to get a following on Instagram or make a living doing what they love doing. Right now, the whole rage is PFPs, or profile picture projects. And PFPs are essentially avatars that you would have in your social media profile. And they typically release about 10,000 of them as a collection or set.
What really got me excited about NFTs and Web3 in general was some of the work we were doing at Shape. We were really looking at how do we turn some of these JPEGs into 3D elements and really build off of some of the technology that we were building in more of the VR, AR space with brands.
When you look inside the NFT contract, it actually has the instructions for how to create that NFT. For example, orange shirt, sunglasses, fedora hat, that could be currently a 2D gutter cat. But if you have the right type of game engine, the right type of environment, that engine can actually look at those instructions and goes, okay, I get it, orange shirt, sunglasses, fedora hat, turn it into a 3D avatar. And sort of the sense that these tokens are actually the instruction manual for the next chapter of the internet.
It's funny because I think that the hype is deserved, but it's a little premature. And the best analogy I can think of is the dot-com boom and bust, where in 1998, virtually every company was adding .com to their name because it would boost their stock price.
There's a lot of people seeing this space and they're like, hey, it's all about the money and all that. I don't think that's the right way to go down. The right way to go down is thinking about the networks. How do we change the relationships between people? How do we enable more people who are underserved? And if you come from that standpoint, the NFTs and DAOs are actually tools for you to make that change.
I think NFTs will become this ubiquitous thing that everybody has. Everybody owns digital assets.
As the creator economy kind of goes on online, these are the places where these items will be consumed, right? And so it creates its own sort of like digital economy in itself.
The NFT is not only like for digital artists, and I think we're gonna see like a window cleaning service that's gonna come and like you're gonna subscribe to their NFTs and you're gonna buy their NFTs, and once you own this NFT, people are gonna come clean your windows.
You know, apes only appeal to so many people, sports only appeal to so many people, and I think that as time goes on, everyone's going to have a way that they can interact with this technology that is meaningful to them.
Amid ongoing civil unrest in Iran, it is lashing out, launching missiles into Iraq. After the break, we'll take you to Toronto, home to one of the largest Iranian diasporas in the world, and hear how families are coping.
From the outside, it almost looks like an ordinary vet's office. Except at most vets, you wouldn't meet Prince Andrew. Prince Andrew who's boarding here these days. And most vets don't have a waiting room that looks like this. Almost everywhere you look, there are cats. And things that bespeak cats. And bustling around in the midst of this convention of cats, this federation of felines, is veterinarian Margie Nixon.
They are more relaxed not hearing dogs around, and they don't sense the smells and the energy of dogs, and as a consequence, they can relax. And it's also because it's set up more like a living room and less like a clinic.
There are some cats in cages, either coming in or out of anesthetic, or because they're too timid or too aggressive.
Do you ever have cat fights?
We occasionally have a little bit of hissing, but other than that, I've been here since September 3rd and haven't had to sew up anybody yet.
The clinic does have stuff like a regular operating room, but instead of a sterile examination room, she has a couple of trendy consulting rooms.
Honey, come here, sweetheart. Let's get you over to your mama. Inevitably, every person who comes in here comments on how nice it is, how different it is. They tend to relax because we're serving them coffee and they're noticing that their cat's not upset. So we still need to brush Suki out. Okay. And you can help, cuddle her and talk to her. Okay. And then what we're going to do is we're going to use the flea foam. Okay. Do you want some coffee? Oh, I got some. Sure. And there's some really good cookies too.
Coffee and cookies for the clients, who tend to get involved in the treatments. And for the cats of cats only, a cookie jar full of, what else? Catnip. I'm Mac Reimel.
Let's return now to tonight's breaking news. Mounties in Coquitlam say they are dealing with, quote, a major police incident that involves several crime scenes. CBC reporter Liam Britton joins us now. Liam, what do we know at this point?
Well, Dan, we know it's affecting traffic on Highway 1. We know it forced the closure of a SkyTrain station in New Westminster. And we know earlier today, shots rang out. This video was taken by Randy Kong. It was captured in Coquitlam near United Boulevard. As you can hear, gunfire, and as you can see, police running down the highway, guns drawn. Now, RCMP haven't said much more about what happened, but here's Randy with what he saw.
I immediately turned my phone on to see if I can capture something, as it was pretty intense, and just in time, I caught them shooting at somebody. I don't know what kind of gun it was, but pretty intense.
Now, the Integrated Homicide Investigation Team says they're not involved at this time. Coquitlam Mayor Richard Stewart wouldn't talk either. Now, we have calls out to the ambulance service and the coroner, but they have not gotten back to us at all either.
All right, we'll wait for them. Hopefully they can get back to us. How is this playing out for commuters right now on a busy night?
Yeah, well, Mounties and TransLink are warning of disruptions. Braid Expo Line station in New Westminster was closed, but it has now reopened, and buses in the area, they're also returning to their regular routes. Disruption there, though. Drivers on Highway 1 have been told to expect delays in both directions near Coquitlam. If you look at Google Maps right now, it's just a big red line on Highway 1 showing backups all the way from Willingdon Avenue in the west to past 160th Street in the east. So Drive BC says drivers should avoid Highway 1 and take a different route. Dan?
Liam Britton reporting live for us tonight. Thank you, Liam. Iran hit northern Iraq today with missiles. Their target was Iranian Kurds taking refuge in Iraq. Iran blames them for fueling the protests that have rocked that country since mid-September, when a Kurdish woman died in the custody of the so-called morality police. As Katie Nicholson reports, the tension in Iran is felt deeply by people in Toronto's large Iranian community.
The message doesn't even deliver. Their internet is shut.
It's been 2 weeks since Sarah Shariati has been able to get a hold of her grandfather in Iran. Today, another day of uncertainty. It's been like this for the last 3 months, as her family and friends are caught in a vicious cycle of protests and violent crackdowns.
Some of my friends have been arrested. We have no news of them. Some of them have been injured. There have been so much tear gas into university dormitories. I keep thinking when I'm walking on campus that, oh my God, how safe I am and how normal life is here. And they have to worry if they can even, they can be alive tomorrow.
Few understand the risk the protesters are taking as well as Azam Jangavi, who in 2018 ripped off her headscarf in public and was swiftly arrested.
You know, I broke my silence. This is the key, you know. Right now, every Iranian broke their silence.
Jangavi has been doing her part to spread the word of the revolt in Iran, amplifying the voices of the protesters from her new home in Canada.
I think they are so brave. They know they might be killed, but every day they come back to a street.
Toronto is home to one of the largest Iranian diaspora in the world, second only to Los Angeles. Nearly 90,000 people have settled here in the Greater Toronto area. And many of them come here to Sam Fayez's store to shop.
Everybody's upset, everybody's down. It's, things quiet down, right? I mean, it's Monday. My store's supposed to be a little bit busier than it is right now.
What's needed, he says, more international pressure on the Islamic regime.
It all goes back to external governments putting their foot down and imposing tougher, stricter sanctions.
And while the world isn't yet rallying around the uprising quite as much as he'd like, in this store, there is support and community. Katie Nicholson, CBC News, Toronto.
Canadian soccer fans are holding their collective breaths tonight as the men's squad makes its debut in the big time tomorrow in Canada's first World Cup game since 1986. The CBC's Thomas Dagla has more from Qatar on the lead up to this historic match.
With Canada competing at this World Cup, there's history made at every turn, from the final training session on the eve of match day to the coach's press conference.
We're pinching ourselves. It's just real now.
Facing the spotlight of the world's soccer media, head coach John Herdman and captain Atiba Hutchinson, now only hours away from their first game against powerhouse Belgium, and later two other nations ranked way above Canada.
It's going to be a battle in every game we play. We're going to fight. We're going to, show our brotherhood, and we want to put Canada on the map.
The biggest star of that brotherhood, Alphonso Davies, is back to flying at full speed, says Herdman. Goalkeeper Milan Borjan back on the pitch too, after injury scares left Canada worried some top players might miss out.
Canada are in a position now where we can field, our strongest team. Everyone's came through.
Let's go Canada!
As if these fans needed any more reason to celebrate.
I'm excited. It's going to be incredible. I'll probably cry.
As many as 30,000 Canadians have flooded into Qatar, some of them enjoying a pint at this hotel rooftop, newly renamed Canada Soccer House. At $249 a ticket, this party may be pricey, but this is history, and they're soaking it all in.
This is amazing. I mean, it's out of this world.
I think we're going to all rally behind the team tomorrow, and it's going to be a good result.
Expectations are sky high. Just ask Belgium about Canada.
They look like a team, very clear in their concepts, very, very dynamic.
While Canada has spent 36 years away from the Men's World Cup, their first opponents have reached the top tournament 6 times since then, and in each opening match, Belgium has never lost. Thomas Daigle, CBC News, Salal, Qatar.
Beijing has reported its first deaths from COVID-19 in months. Case numbers across that country are surging, leaving millions of people to face China's controversial COVID-0 policy, lockdowns and quarantines. As Sasha Petrusik explains, officials may see no other alternative.
Beijing echoes with quiet. Stores closed, residential compounds where COVID is found locked down. And daily testing for many, all part of China's zero COVID policy since the start of the pandemic. A political insistence on no cases at all, at almost any cost.
It scares me, and that, I'm going to be carted off to like a central quarantine camp or even a quarantine hotel. So, yeah, it's still very much unsettling.
China's economy has been hit hard. My friends' businesses have gone bankrupt, she says. People have lost jobs. Nationally, economic growth has slowed to just over 3% this year, says the World Bank. It may even be shrinking, say some economists. There have been signals from some officials that zero COVID could be softened, but with infections across China reported above 28,000 daily, a near record level, and the first 3 deaths since May in the capital, officials now insist there will be no slacking off here yet. The rest of the world may have stepped back from measures like lockdowns. But in China, he says, the politically correct policy can't possibly be reversed. Indeed, officials declared victory over the virus months ago, with Chinese leader Xi Jinping doubling down on zero COVID at the Communist Party Congress last month.
The problem is they don't really have a way out that I think has become so politically tied to the leadership and also part of the narrative of China doing better than the West.
There's a practical problem as well. Vaccines used in China have been shown less effective than mRNA vaccines elsewhere, and many older people haven't been vaccinated at all. Ending zero COVID now could put more than 1 billion people at risk. Sasha Petrusik, CBC News, Toronto.
Canadian retailers are hoping you'll spend some serious coin this Black Friday amid new signs the country's economy is slowing down. After the break, retail experts will give you a look at the Christmas spending forecast and some items on everyone's list. Authorities in Indonesia say yesterday's earthquake killed more than 250 people. And now there's a desperate search to find survivors beneath the rubble. Officials say more than 150 people are still missing. Many of the victims are children who were in school when the quake hit. It had a magnitude of 5.6 and was centered in the country's most populous province in a city about 75 kilometers from the capital, Jakarta. People have been warned to spend the night outdoors because of aftershocks. Indonesia lies in the so-called Ring of Fire, an area surrounded by a stretch of volcanoes and fault lines that are prone to earthquakes. She's back. Meteorologist Johanna Wagstaffe joins us with the BC-wide full forecast. Lots of rain, and that is good for the reservoirs, we should emphasize.
Yes, and not the kind of rain that triggered warnings here on the south coast. So we'll take some good fall rain, and I've got more of it in the forecast. But first, a breath behind the system that is tracking across the interior as we speak. You can see the next few days lined up in the satellite, that cold front tracking across the interior tonight. We get a bit of a break. You can see that blue sky in the satellite, and then the next system to move in for Friday. So a couple days break for the south coast. We still have those snowfall warnings in place for the mountain passes, starting with the Coquitlam, 15 to 20 centimeters overnight tonight, and reduced visibility as well. Caribou also under that snowfall warning. We have air quality statement with Prince George in the valley. Kitimat looking to get 70 millimeters of rain with the next system, and then 110 kilometer per hour winds also with that next system hitting Haida Gwaii and central coastal sections. So a little calmer down here on the south coast. That next system, though, will get to us in a couple of days, hitting the north coast right now. Down to a 3 tonight, back up to a 9. And I do have a few showers in the mix tomorrow, even though the bulk of the system has moved on. Still keeping the showers behind that system in the forecast for tomorrow. I also think we'll see the blue skies. Just running you through to Sunday so you know how much more rain is coming across the province before the end of the week. Really see those bullseyes up in the northwest, those white colors, that's the 100 millimeter plus range. And then the yellows as we get down towards parts of Metro Vancouver, the North Shore, Tri-Cities, we could end up with 60 millimeters by the end of the week. And this is with a couple of systems that are following suit in a couple of days. Temperatures are fairly seasonal for this time of the year in Metro Vancouver, 9, and we're sort of hovering around that over the next few days. We will see temperatures cool down in the long range. So I want to tell you that third weather story in just a moment. But until we get there, lingering showers in the forecast for tomorrow across Metro Vancouver. It'll feel a little brisk with that wind change as well, getting back up to an 8. 9 for Thursday. That's our true break day. Mix of sun and cloud for most of the south coast. Showers return Friday morning. We could see some steadier rain before that full day of rain on Saturday. And then, Dan, look at that. Not done with the cold and clear yet this season.
Yeah. Winter-like in fall.
I would say that's us.
Not bad. Thanks, Joe.
You're welcome.
The latest retail sales numbers show the Canadian economy is slowing down. September figures were lower than expected as rising prices had consumers keeping their cash in their pockets. But as Philippe de Montigny reports, there are signs the purse strings will loosen once the holiday shopping season sets in.
Canadian retailers rang up $61 billion in sales in September. That's down 0.5% after edging up 0.7% in August. Another sign our economy is slowing down. Sales fell in 7 of the 11 subsectors, leading that decline, gas stations and supermarkets. And the slowdown isn't just in physical stores. E-commerce sales dropped by 5.4% in September. Meanwhile, retailers sold more clothing and accessories. That segment was up 1.7% as many people returned to the office to work and took part in more social gatherings. While September's numbers are undeniably weak, the early data for October looks very strong, with sales on track to increase by 1.5%. The Retail Council of Canada says Canadians are still spending heading into the holiday season, but changing how they shop.
Our survey showed that Canadians nationally will be spending about the same as they did last year, which is approximately about $790. The difference will be is that this year they are looking for more meaningful or practical gifts. Consumers might also decrease the number of people that they buy for, or perhaps they'll buy them fewer gifts. I think everybody has concerns of a slowing economy, but it does look like consumers are still spending.
And that's something the Bank of Canada will be watching closely. By hiking interest rates, they want us to spend less money and buy less stuff in hopes of easing the pressure on prices and bringing down inflation. Philippe de Montigny, CBC News, Toronto.
Coming up, we're going to take you to a Regina High School where the school sports program has a new category, esports, the training that gets involved in getting great at video games. After this.
Their job is to make sure the rules are followed and people are being good sports. But this new rule isn't for players on the ice. It's for fans in the stands.
This year we instituted a Rink monitor program. Parents actively participate in helping maintain respectfulness in the stands.
At this tournament last year, a goaltender from Nova Scotia had racist slurs fired at him from the crowd. The Hockey PEI Disciplinary Committee suspended 5 minor hockey players from the island for 25 games. These new monitors have been put in place by tournament organizers to watch out for incidents like that and put a stop to them.
It's no longer being tolerated. There's no place for it in hockey. Youth participating in sports should be able to do it in a fun, safe, and healthy environment. So this was just another step to try to build in like some framework to make sure that we're keeping it as fun and safe for the minor hockey players as we can.
The idea came after Jonathan Mosier saw a similar thing at a soccer tournament and thought it could be a good fit. This year, every team in this tournament has to have a designated rink monitor. If they don't, they can't play. It's a volunteer position to keep an eye on their team's parents and their fans. Jonathan Hunter stepped up for his team.
Just making sure that everything's going smooth, and if someone's not happy with what's being said in the stands, they put a good program in place where I can just walk over and talk to people from the association, and they'll come over and talk to the parent or whoever, not just parents, whoever's here, if they're not acting appropriately, I guess.
The rink monitor can also try to diffuse the situation on their own if they feel comfortable doing so. If not, they can ask an organizer for help.
The idea was someone that's a peer. It may be able to diffuse the situation a lot easier, being a peer-to-peer type of situation, as opposed to someone in a position of authority and then already having that conflict starting.
Hunter says he would volunteer again, and if all goes smoothly, the tournament committee says it's something they'll look at bringing back again next year to make sure everyone is on their best behavior. Chien Desjardins, CBC News, Charlottetown.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
CBC British Columbia's annual Food Bank Day returns on December 2nd. Join us for special broadcasts of your favorite CBC Radio 1 programs and fundraising for BC's food banks. And enjoy candlelit carols and joyous holiday favorites at Christmas with Corleone, December 16th to 19th. Celebrate the season and get your tickets at corleone.org.
Some students at a high school in Regina are training hard, sharpening their skills in preparation for big competition. But as Ethan Williams shows us, their sport is not played on a field, it's at their fingertips.
These students at O'Neill High School have traded in their books for video game controllers. This is the school's esports club. Students spend each lunch hour battling one another in games like Super Smash Brothers or a soccer game played with vehicles that's called Rocket League.
It's a nice experience, I should say. But yeah, as you can hear from the background, it's very energetic in here.
No, it's not. Why do you guys have Arceus, bro?
The students recently played in a tournament against other esports teams from across the country competing for prizes. Math teacher Dean Venderman oversees the club. He says esports mirrors traditional sports in terms of practice and preparation and teaches valuable lessons.
Are you eating properly? Are you exercising? Because you'll be able to play the game better if you're doing that. How do you handle defeat? Like, how do you treat people and with respect online and all those type of things? See, this is the mic.
Venderman also uses some of the games to teach his classes. 15-year-old Annika Warren says the club welcomes kids who haven't found an activity that fits.
It was one of the clubs where I felt the most at home. Everybody from every age, every group, every grade can just be as one and just play video games.
They just did it better.
Esports may not be common in high schools, but it's taken off professionally in recent years. Total competition prize money can top tens of millions of dollars and attract hundreds of players.
Some games have more viewership online for their finals than most sporting events do. So it's been nice to see, I think, some of the normalcy of esports kind of start to arise.
Blake Zanadine has set up an esports organization in Saskatchewan. He's doing outreach with teachers later this month.
Oh yeah, 2 kills. That's not fair.
So what's next for O'Neill High School's esports club?
My idea would be to actually have a league and then at the end have a tournament somewhere and host it at, like, say, the IMAX or maybe one of the movie theaters and have their games up on the big screen.
Until then, it's practice time. Ethan Williams, CBC News, Regina.
You told 16-year-old Dan he could just play video games as an athlete at high school, say you'd have a loyal recruit. And that's like only 13 years ago. Thanks for being with us tonight on CBC Vancouver News at 6. You can watch this newscast on CBC Gem, our free app, and check us out on YouTube, Instagram, and of course our own website, cbc.ca/BC. Benit Brach will have your late news at 11 o'clock, including all the latest on that police incident with shots fired in Coquitlam. Good night.